Good morning and welcome to Ritual Without Rules, Day 2. This is all about creating a sacred space. So, Instagram got to see me a little bit early. I have used the tea as an incense this morning. So, don't forget, you can go to the international section of this I got, I think, at No Frills. Yeah, I think it was No Frills here in Canada. But any grocery store that has a cultural section usually has a blend like this. And this tea has aniseed, thyme, chamomile, sage, lavender, Damascus rose, and melissa. So you can pick out the pieces that you want to create your own incense. You can add essential oils to it. There's so many things that you can do. But as always, I'm just going to use this to clear my energy, to ground myself. You set the intention. Bring that smoke to your heart, bring it to your third eye, bring it over your crown, and we can bring the smoke down. Perfect way to start the day and create sacred space. So I'm going to put this over here, and we are all going to talk about ignore limit. Sorry, Instagram, that stopped for a second. I am a human, and this human form doesn't like to sleep. So last night, I was up until 3 o'clock in the morning watching TikToks because I couldn't get asleep. And I used every single tool in my tool belt. I don't love sleeping pills. I think it really affects my energy. So I'm a huge believer in marijuana and the healing properties of it, and especially for me, the sedation piece of it, because I have been, somebody wants to see the tea again. So this is an herbal tea. It's got so many awesome things in it. This giant container that will probably last you a year if you're going to use it for incense, for offerings, for all of those things. It was $5. I'll post an image of it because I actually took a picture of it on the shelf. And I actually think it was on sale. So it was something like $4.25. But this is an awesome option if you're a thrifty witch. You know, there's so many ways to do practices that doesn't need you to spend a ton of money. A lot of the tools that I'm going to show you today, I have found on my property, I have found in my travels, I have brought with me. And it does have awesome ingredients like melissa for healing. We've got Damascus rose for love. We've got lavender for that calming effect. We have sage clearing our energy. We have chamomile. Oh, a little more calm because we always need that. Thyme is just an amazing healer. Time heals all things. And aniseed if you want to like fire up your practice. So it's got all of those things in here. Why wouldn't you go and grab this? Makes no sense, right? Okay. So let's get into creating a sacred space. And if you followed along yesterday, you'll know that I am Emma Smallbone. I'm a seer, a healer, and a mentor. I have been practicing my entire life. I can't actually, in my mind, think of a time when I wasn't connected. Yes, in college, if you read my book, because I did write a book called The Barefoot Medium about my journey through all of this, being a child and seeing spirits, about how I shut it all down as a, college student because I was so open and I was receiving so many things. This journey is going to last this lifetime and many more lifetimes because I know that this isn't my first go at this. So that is who I am. Who I teach and I help in my practice is anybody that is interested in a spiritual path. That does not mean Wicca. That does not mean specifically paganism. That does not mean specifically talking to angels or any of those things. It's whatever you choose, because you need to follow. And I love this shirt from Jessup's General. I think we have one in stock in the shop, but if it's not in the size that you want, Jessup's General is an amazing store in Alberta. Please support them because I think they do wonderful things. But following your path, and even look at this snake, is so windy, right? And we all know the healing strength in snakes, and I know some people hate them. I'll show you a little bit earlier how I incorporate them into my sacred space. But I'm here to help anybody on their path, whether you're a longtime practitioner and you feel like you've gotten stale in your practice and you are completely overwhelmed by it. And I see this all the time. You know, if you're on Instagram right now, if you're on TikTok right now, if you're on YouTube right now, consuming all of this content that's being put out there, there are so many videos that shame people for not, and it's not an intentional shame, but we're human. We feel guilt about not doing the things. And I'm here to tell you there is always time to pick up back your practice. It doesn't have to be like, if you're not practicing every single day, if you're not practicing every single week, if you're not practicing every single month, there's this underlying story in the community that you're not a real witch or pagan or whatever path you choose, and it's just not true. We all ebb and flow in our practices, and there are some times where we need to abandon our practice so we can live here in the human world. I do this a lot, and it's not like I'm saying, oh, sorry, Odin, I'm not going to be, you're not a part of my life anymore. That's not it at all. It's just, I sometimes need to wake up in the morning and get my son ready for school, and then I need to go to a doctor's appointment, and then I need to go get my dog's food, and then and I do not ever feel guilt for not doing these things that I'm showing you, because it's my personal practice and it has to work within my human existence. If you're creating a practice that feels like a burden, and we spoke about this yesterday, if you're creating a practice where, you've been told that waking up between 4 a.m. and 6 a.m. is key to energizing yourself for the day. Yes, all of those things are true. I have insomnia, and I haven't had insomnia my whole entire life. I've never been a good sleeper. So there are days when 4 o'clock rolls around and I'm still awake. So I need to sleep between 4 and 6. And that's exactly what I did today. I actually slept between 3, and I think my son woke me up at 7:30. That's okay. There is nothing wrong with my ritual fitting into my schedule. And that's really one of the main messages that I want to get through to all of you while we're doing this course is your practice has to fit with your life. So let's talk about sacred spaces. Who here has already created a sacred space, or you have an altar, which is also another form of a sacred space, or you have sacred space outside, you like to go and sit somewhere and have coffee, or your sacred space is at your mom's in the basement, in that corner, because it feels really cozy. Who here already has some form of a sacred space where you can go and sit and just feel at one with yourself? It can also be a sacred space that you share with your family. If you all come together in the living room and you have deep conversations, and that just feels like the coziest place in your house, that can become your sacred space. So there are many kind of misconceptions about sacred spaces. So but it moves around. Definitely several spaces. We have comments coming in from Instagram. I'm not actually seeing anybody on YouTube, but I think that's because we had so much latency yesterday. I did fix that. I found a setting on the back end of YouTube. So I'm hoping today that the lag isn't like an hour like it was yesterday. But if you're watching live on Instagram, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming out. So, sacred space. What does this mean? It can be an altar, like my little altar here. It can be if I turned the camera around, and one of these days I will, but I did an arts project the other day and it's kind of like all over my Reiki table, but I will eventually flip the camera around for you guys to see that essentially my whole entire shop has turned into my sacred space. So I have one other sacred space in my bedroom that I will never show anybody, because I do believe that some of our magical workings are meant to be private. So, people are always like, well, what do you do for ritual? And can I see what you do? And do you pull cards? And what do you have on your altar? I will show some of my altars to the public. This one is specifically my working altar. I use this to charge magical tools. One of the things that I had on there over the last month are actually these rose sticks, and they have thorns on them. We use these for a lot of things. You can create a pentacle with them. You can use them to banish if I'm doing a spell. I put things behind it if I want to protect it, and in front of it if I want it gone. So this altar, you can only see half of it, because the other half of it, I actually have a spell working right now. And the belief that I hold, and this isn't everybody's belief, that if a spell is working, hey Jen on YouTube. So we've got people on YouTube, yay, the lag isn't as bad, they're saying on YouTube. So if your preferred platform is YouTube, the latency is fixed. So if you want to go over there, awesome. So yes, on the one side of this altar right now, I have a spell doing its work. And the belief that I have, and other people in my traditions have, that if I, 1111, yay, if I show that to the public then becomes a part of that spell. And those thoughts that I'm trying to invoke, that feeling that I'm trying to invoke, that magic that I'm trying to invoke, can be disrupted by those eyes, by those thoughts. So whenever I'm doing any spell work for myself, oh, Sky, thank you so much. Sky on Instagram just said, so excited for Ritual Without Rules again. The first one changed my life. Oh, full body chills, people. Thank you. I really, the love on the altar is already working. Oh, Instagram, you can't see, but I've got some, and I'll show you in a minute. I've got some flowers, some roses for love, for attracting love on my altar. It's already working. I got so many compliments this morning. Thank you, Sky. So yes, and the hippie housewife says she has the same belief too. She, there is this belief that if you show all your workings to the public, they can put their energy on it. So if you have somebody, and trust me, I have a couple, that follow me but don't comment or like because you're just trying to see what I'm doing, I know you're out there. We all have those people in our lives that, are following everything that you do, but aren't actually contributing, and they're just taking, and the energy is icky. We don't want that to interact with our spells. I would never want a spell that I'm doing. I mean, the little love thing, that's just a little additional boost. Nobody can really interact with that one. But the spell work that I'm doing on my working altar right now is something that other people could influence if they saw it happening. So I choose to not show my, thank you, the hippie housewife. She says, I very much appreciate you. I appreciate you too. And yes, it is sad that people have ulterior motives in this world, but it's one of the things about practicing that you have to realize is There's a huge community in the witchy world right now. And there's a lot of people that are coming into this community that don't understand the boundaries of practice, that don't understand, you know, how their energy is influencing other people's energy because A, they're only just starting out, or they don't have the right intentions in doing this kind of work, or it's just somebody that's jealous of what you're doing or what you're offering, or that one I get a lot. And I get it. I live a magical fucking life. Pardon my French. I understand why people would see this and be like, oh my God, I want it. But I'm human. I have hardships in my life too. It's not all perfect. Hence the spell working over here. So let's get back to the sacred space because this is so important. I'm old and I don't have to put my whole life on social media. It's so true. I think this is something that we also don't understand the balance yet. Does everything have to be on social media? No, it doesn't. You don't have to post every single altar, every single card pull, because let me tell you, in my beliefs, when you do that, you are inviting people into your personal practice, which can be energetically a very dangerous thing. So if you're showing all your workings online, I want you to consider what that does energetically. And for you, it might feel okay. For you, it might feel really good. And hey, that's your personal practice. You can do that. But my belief is I don't show all my workings. Sometimes I'll show my workings when they're complete and done. I did a spell a couple of weeks ago and I did show that because I felt the shift. It worked. I'm good. Here, you can see what I did. But the magic that's going on over here right now, it's never going to be shown. So, what is a sacred space? Sacred space is all about creating a magical energy in that sacred space so you can drop in easily. And when I say drop in, I mean you can get into that mindset of creating a ritual, setting your intentions, doing your workings, whether it is offering to the gods, whether it is divination work like pulling cards. Because when we create sacred space, spirit knows that our work is beginning. So I love having separate altars and separate sacred spaces for different intentions. So if you come to my house, you'll be like, damn, that's a lot of altars, but I love them. It is one of my favorite ways to express my magic. It's one of my favorite ways to interact because I love the energy of sacred tools. And, you know, so many people are going to show you, and I see the memes on Instagram, and I've even considered creating a meme that shows you how to create an altar. But for me, the energy of the tools on the altar is so incredibly important that I've been collecting the things that are on my altars for a lifetime. This isn't about going to the dollar store and getting a spell candle. Let's take a moment here. Emma's gonna a little bit of a rant about the dollar store and the energy of the products. Because, yes, Eileen, I will talk to you about that. My altars are incredibly witchy. So if I don't get back to you, Eileen, because I noticed that I did this yesterday, I said, we'll get back to that. Remind me to talk about that. But I want to talk about the energy of the tools that we use on our altars. I keep seeing in tons of witchy groups where people are like, this is my store haul. This is my Dollar Tree haul. This is my, like, oh my God. And yes, I go to the grocery store to get $5 worth of herbs, right? This is the score of the century, people. If you're not going to pick this up at No Frills or whatever, I don't know what else to say to you, because I could not sell it to you for this price, because all of my herbs are wildcrafted and organic. So that means the price goes up. And yes, the energy of this may not be the same, but you can shift it. You can consecrate it. You can Reiki it. You can do those things. But when it comes to items from the dollar store for magical workings, you better have damn good Reiki. Because you have to remember that the energy of every single person that touched those tools is going to be in that. And yes, we can wave a crystal over it. We can clear it with sage. We can do all of those things. But in my mind, something that is created not in this country, and I'm not saying that anything from I get my incense from the UK, I get my incense from the US, but if we're asking people to produce something for $1, what do you think the work environment looks like when we're producing, oh yeah, knockoff decks? Don't even get me started about people buying crystals and decks on Wish. I will lose my mind, because I know personally a ton of deck designers. Vix Maxwell, Chris Ann, Kyle Gray. These are all people that I know and support, like personally, very much. And when I see these decks being ripped off and put on Wish, the energy behind that is so detrimental to your practice. And I know there are people out there that don't realize they're buying counterfeit decks. That, when you buy the Muse or the Light Seers off of Wish, none of that money is going to Chris Ann, the beautiful creator that created it. And we really have to consider all of those things in our practice. Is your practice ethical? Are you purchasing items that are energetically positive? And I don't want to say this is all about, love and light, because I'm not a believer in that. I think we have to acknowledge the dark. I think that our life is a path between the light and the dark. And as soon as we realize that you can work through all of those things, life gets better. But we have to recognize the difference between a tool purchased from the dollar store and tools purchased from a handcrafted place. So I'm going to explain some of the things that I have on my sacred space. I'm going to show you these items that some of them have been in my life since I was 16, 14, like even younger probably. And to me, the energy in these pieces is what boosts my practice. So I want you to consider, when you create your sacred space, whether it's in your bedroom, whether it's in your living room, whether it's in your kitchen. I have an abundance altar in my kitchen, because when you come in the front door, the left corner in feng shui is your abundance altar. This is when you come in my shop door, this is my abundance corner. So I have a little bit of money offerings. I have some cinnamon there. I have some citrine there. I have everything to attract the abundance, because this is my abundance corner. So consider that. When you walk into the space that you want to create, if you're looking to create abundance, the left-hand corner is where you want to put your abundance altar. Because in feng shui, it works with the energy of the earth. And if you haven't learned about feng shui, and I'm not saying you need to go and learn how to do it, But look at the bagua, which is like the layout of feng shui, and what corners, where the fire piece is, where the abundance piece is, where the family piece is, all of those things. When you look at your house, you then know where it would best be. I know, as if a small business doesn't have enough to worry about. Exactly. So if look at your space and energetically, what are you drawn to? So, every once in a while, spirit goes, that's not where your altar is supposed to be. And I got to move everything. And that's totally fine. We need to refresh. How do you feel? Somebody asked, how do you feel about indigo? For books and decks, totally. I got my first angel deck, which was years ago, and it was so funny because I went to Indigo. I was called to go. And I was like, I just don't want an angel deck. I don't want an angel deck. I don't want an angel deck. Well, I go and find this deck, and I love it because it had photography on it. I think it's called The Forgotten Angels. And it was an angel deck. So yes, the one thing I will say, Sabrina, though, crystals, I have put my hands on those crystals at Indigo. They are not happy crystals. So I actually want to create a vendor list of people. Desiree Dawn in Stratford, she has a little crystal apothecary there. Her crystals are phenomenal, and I should probably interview her at some point. I also have a friend in the States who is the rock seller on Instagram. She is phenomenal because she researches the mines that all of the crystals come from. So when you're buying crystals from her that they've been ethically sourced and that she physically has a relationship with the miners, which I adore. And this is something that, I was talking about ethics in practice. Considering the tools that you're using in your practice. Like, I talk to people all the time and they're like, I did this spell and it just didn't work and I don't know why. And I'm like, well, what tools did you use? Well, I went to the dollar store and somebody gave me this thing, and they're not considering the energy of the items. So let me just explain. Yeah, the Mystic Tree is really good. I love the Mystic Tree. I've been in there a couple of times to talk to them because my son was actually, he had a doctor's appointment in Milton. So I went down and they're lovely, lovely people. So yes, the Mystic Tree in Burlington is a really good one. Okay. So let's talk about my working altar. Why this is so important to me. This table I have been carrying around since I was 16. This is the very first piece of furniture that I owned. It is, it's got, I think it's oak veneer on it, which oak is magical in my tradition. So we love oak for its wisdom and its knowledge and its strength. I literally carried this from the secondhand store with 2 chairs by myself on my back. It has literally supported me through my whole entire adult life. This piece to me is so, and even as I have my hand on it now, I can feel the energy running into me. There is a relationship that I have created with this table. I'm now 45. This table has been with me forever. And I know to some people that doesn't make sense. It's like, well, why do I need to carry? And I didn't intentionally go, I'm going to carry this table with me for the rest of my life because it's going to be my altar. But it has meaning. So the foundation of my working altar is something I have had with me since I was 16 years old. This is one of my favorite tools on the planet. And actually, when I talk about it, I get really emotional because my brother and I, so we're born on the same day. We're 3 years apart. He's my older brother. I love him dearly. when I was 16. And it's like all of these things came into my life at the same time. It was kind of, I think it was one of my first awakenings. And if anybody has been practicing for a while, you know that we have an awakening as women during puberty. And that was really one of the first, like, well, this second since I was a kid, because I had spirit show up in a big way when I was a kid. You can read about it in my book. But at this time, my brother came home and said, I found this for you. He was at the Pinery, I think, where he found this. So the Pinery is also really, oh, Beltane, that's amazing that you were born on Beltane. This has so much energy in it for me. And I will tell you, the coolest thing about it is my hand fits perfectly in it. So I love this. And doesn't it look like, it totally looks like a Harry, it's like way better than a Harry Potter wand. Somebody in my community yesterday asked me, what do you use a wand for? And this is a really good question because you can use this as a wand. This is a rose thing. So if you're trying to banish, using a thorny rose stem is an amazing way to do your workings. So essentially, you would turn this into an extension of your arm. And rose is all about love, self-love. You can use the thorns for banishing. You can use all sorts of things. So this could actually be a wand, but I love this. So when I'm doing magical workings, this just focuses my energy. And if you're casting a circle or if you're doing any work, like if I'm sending energy out or if I'm doing a healing, if you're doing a distance healing with me, this is probably going to be involved. If you even come here to have a healing done and you lay on the Reiki table, I will probably use this to point at your chakras or to point at places that need to be healed. This amplifies it. And I absolutely love this. This is one of my favorite pieces. Now, people get freaked out because they don't love snakes, but I do. To me, they represent healing and shedding of our ego and our, darker self, the things that we need to let go of. I am very lucky this year. My snakes have disappeared because I think they were breeding and now they're hiding because I think they go kind of quiet before they breed or after they breed. I can't remember. But I have all sorts of snake skins on my altar to represent that healing. So sometimes what I'll do, if I have a candle that I want to do a healing around, I will wrap the snake skins around the candle for healing, so then it will amplify. And I use these again in my healing work. If I'm doing distance healing, I may place this on the Reiki table to represent the place that needs to be healed. So, what do we need on our altar? We don't need anything. There is no manual. Yes, if you're Wiccan, there is a specific way to set up an altar. And things to consider if you feel that you're more slanted towards that religion, because the difference between witchcraft and Wicca is a religion. It is a system. It is a practice that is very specific. And I will tell you, the reason why I've never been drawn to Wicca is because I fucking hate rules. Ritual without rules. I also have ADHD. I have 14% memory. It does not work for me to do things the same way every single time. I am much more a go with the flow and listen to the energy, listen to spirit, listen to the gods. That's what works for me. So when I'm choosing my pieces for my altar, yes, there is some basis in that tradition of representing the elements. So I have all of the elements on my altar, but at this point, it's more because I just have a ton of stuff on my altar. But I have seashells to represent water. I have a feather to represent air. I have moss to represent the earth. And then I have my gods and there's an owl here. You can't really see on Instagram, but on YouTube, you can see my little owl, which I got from Morocco. All of these things that I'm collecting over the years. Like, you know, when I was in Morocco, we grabbed a bunch, the royal we. I grabbed a bunch of these all-seeing eyes. And for me, hey guys, for me, all-seeing eye is protective. I have one here. This one actually represents my father. He was a Mason, if you don't know. So I grew up a little bit of that tradition too. The all-seeing eye for me is incredibly protective. My YouTube channel is the WOOshop with Emma Smallbone. I'm not sure if I put a link in the bio yet, but I will be doing that. So all-seeing eye, I use for protection work. Again, we actually, if you want to incorporate snake skin into your altar or into your practice, I do have some still on the shop, which are these. So you can use this. If you're creating a spell, you can create a mini altar like this, which we also have some of these oak slabs. And this one is so awesome. Can you see the star? Oh, sorry, YouTube. I keep forgetting. There's a star right in the middle. This came from an oak tree that we planted for my first Mother's Day. And unfortunately, this year, the gypsy moths just ravaged it so much that we had to cut it down. And I'm a huge believer in you do not waste anything. So we have as much of the oak tree as I could possibly scavenge. And last month in the shop release, I offered up some of these with an anointing oil. So some of them had the star in them, but this could be the perfect little altar plate that you could then put your items on to do your spell work. But for me, it just represents the love of my family. So I use that a lot. Now, one of the things that I will say, not necessarily the dollar store, but I love shopping at like Michael's or at HomeSense for items that you wouldn't necessarily think are witchy. This is a 5-pointed star, and I got these, and they're handcrafted. They're these amazing wood little stars, but you can also use this to represent protection on your altar. I love my pocket goddess. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about was creating an altar in your car for safe travels. I use a pocket goddess because she is based on the Venus de Willendorf, which was if you aren't an art major, she was a fertility symbol like this, but also a protection symbol. And they think people put them in their pockets to keep them safe while they were on their travels. So she comes with me. She's been to Salem. She's been to Morocco. She has been to England. She has been to California. She comes with me wherever I go. And then when we're at home, she sits on my altar. So this is one from the shop, but my actual goddess right now is sitting on the altar, all nestled in her bird's nest, which I found. This is the other piece. Found items, snake skins, bird's nests. What else do I have that is, I've got cedar and I've got sage and I've got all sorts of herbs. Whenever I'm doing spells and there's like lots of little bits of herbs left over, I collect them in a little bowl so I can use them later at offerings or to sprinkle on my altar for their desired effect. So what have I got? Okay, so then this little shelf right here, this represents all the energy of my clients, all the energy of my loved ones, all the energy of my ancestors. So in all of these little cubbies, I have certain things that are important to me. I have a couple of gifts that clients have given me. I have one that is so dear to my heart. Let me just show you. When her grandmother died, she was given this item, and I believe it's an elk horn that was carved into the shape of an elk, and it's for like a bolo tie. So like you put a scarf around and then you it up like this. But she said that she thought I would appreciate it so much more and she didn't want to lose it. And it was just such a kind gift at such a moment that felt so important. So this sits on my altar to remind me that I'm supported by my clients and loved by my clients. So that goes here. What else? I have I love little bottles because I like curio things, but I've collected all these shells from like beaches that I've been on. There's a little wee tiny pine cone in there. So many different things. Let's just put that on there. Okay. So, do you need all these things? Nope. Do you want all these things? Nope. Some of you will be like, I don't want snake skin on my altar. I'm not into goddess worship. I'm not into crystals. I'm not into whatever it is. You don't have to have those things on your altar. So Eileen, I think, asked about, can you put your altar in a public place so it doesn't look like an altar? Hell yes. And that's why I say things like this, because, at Christmas, there's all sorts of animals, like those figurines. There's all sorts of like stars. There's all sorts of elements, the wreaths that they create, that you could create an altar in your front hallway and nobody would have a clue that it's witchy, right? So what do you want? Oh, yay, Robin C., you found it on YouTube. Perfect. What would you want to have that altar represent? And that's truly what you need to think about when you're creating a sacred space. So a sacred space could be your meditation spot. A sacred space could be somewhere you want to read. A sacred space could be where you want to do your workings. It can be any of these things, but it doesn't have to be complicated. So I wanted to show you a couple of things that we have offered in the past at the shop. I think I've got, this one's not in the shop yet because I haven't finished it. I have to paint all the way down. But this simply on a table could then become your altar. And you could just place things in front of it that you want to work with. This one for me represents the divine feminine and healing and the Kundalini rising. So this is a great one. One of the other things that we had is these little wee tiny altar tables. So this can literally go anywhere. It could get covered so much you may not even see the pentacle, but this is a really great way to kind of bring, I don't even want to say modern, it doesn't look really modern, but decor into your altar space. So this could just sit on a windowsill. This could sit, on a bedside table. This could sit anywhere. And you can also I'm a huge fan of once you get these tools, actually altering it yourself. So you could paint something, you could Mod Podge. Oh my God, I love Mod Podge. You could put whatever you want. You could put sigils in here. There's so many things that you could do with this. But have you noticed something about all of the things that I'm talking about? Have you noticed, what are they made of? What are the things that I have put on my altar? What's the commonality there? Have you guys noticed yet? Have you? Come on. Tell me what your thoughts are. Have you noticed something about all the items that I have spoken about so far that I put on my altar as offerings, as symbols of things? Yes, Candace, they are all made from natural materials. So going back to the dollar store, yes, Grumpy Granny, wood or natural materials. And yes, hippie housewife, it's all things I love. It's not me just going down to the crystal shop and buying a clear quartz because somebody told me that that's what I need. When we're talking about crystals, which I will be honest, I used them a lot in the beginning of my practice, but I don't use them very much anymore. These two are my main meditating crystals. So if you know anything about clear quartz, when you're meditating, one point out, one point in, it allows the circulation of the energy. Woo! Okay. Yeah, I definitely haven't worked with this for a while because I just got a head rush when I did that. If your practice is like on point, I will tell you something. It doesn't really take long for you to feel the intensity of something. Like if whenever I do a spell on my altar, I'm like, whoa, okay, yep, feeling that. It's almost instantaneous because I'm already sitting in that flow. I'm already in that space of, I've created the altar space. I've said this is my dedication to Odin and Diana and Artemis. This is my working altar. I've set the stage for doing the work. And that is what a sacred space is. You create a space energetically and physically for you to do the work that you want to do. Then what happens is every single time you come to that space, every single time you do workings with your altar, every single time you sit in that same space for meditation, it amplifies the energy just a little bit more. So you can imagine that I have had this table my entire life. I have had this wand my entire adult life. Every single time, I keep messing with the focus because I'm waving my arms around too much. Every single time you do the work, it amplifies. It amplifies everything. So now, because these have been so charged with energy for so many years, it's easy for me to do my workings. It doesn't feel hard. I hear people say all the time, I don't think my spell worked. I don't think my love potion worked. I don't think my, manifestation, it's just like taking forever. Sorry. I watched a lot of TikTok last night while I couldn't sleep. So I'm just like, oh God, people. I love that more and more people are practicing, but I want you to realize this is a practice. This takes time. It takes energy. And yes, materials and natural elements. Exactly. So when we go back to the conversation about the dollar store, what do you think the dollar store has that is comparable to this? What do you think the dollar store has that is comparable to this? What do you think the dollar store has that is comparable to this? I just buy cheap roses, people, because cheap roses don't get their thorns cut off. So I got these roses at No Frills again. But then they come on my altar and they get charged and they feel friggin' magical. Have you had a customer and you feel the energy is something wrong? I have ones I will never forget. I actually, to be honest, no. Because I do so much work. So the question is, have you ever had a customer that you feel the energy is just off and negative? I think at this point in my practice, because I put out so much content and I put out exactly who I am and what I believe in, I don't get those people. I really don't anymore. And people ask me all the time, you must get a lot of haters because you're a practicing witch and you talk about things that aren't normal. I don't. Because, hey, I lit my black candle to banish any of those thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And hey, I lit my white candle to allow spirit into the space to watch over and protect me. So no, if you're doing a practice regularly, that negative energy shouldn't even enter your space. It shouldn't even show up. And that is something that I have really come to understand in the last probably 5 years, because there was a point where I wasn't doing what I needed to do to create a sacred space. There was a point where I wasn't really paying attention to creating a protected space for myself. And if you've all been following me for a long time, you know I had to cut a lot of people out of my inner circle because their intentions weren't great. And now, because I've set the intention that, Spirit, I will work for you, but I will only work for you if you take care of and filter out those people for me, so I don't have to be burdened with that. It works so much better. And I do not get those people anymore. But it takes time to get there. That is all. So back to the dollar store not being great. But there are places you can get things. And you've already heard me mention several times HomeSense. Let me just get the snake skin out of here for you to show you. I got a set of 4 of these, perfect for the elements. They were citronella candles. So I allowed these to burn down. And now when I want to represent the elements on my altar, this is one of the ways that I use. So this is a concrete vessel. And this is what I was talking about yesterday. If you don't have, ooh, my cauldron's hot. Hang on. If you don't have a cauldron, a concrete vessel, and let's put some of this, where did my incense go? A concrete vessel is an amazing way to create a safe, fire-safe vessel, right? So, ooh, my frankincense and myrrh. Oh, I love it. So the hippie housewife says, I'm literally listening while reorganizing my front room to combine my sacred space and my crafting space. I love that. So that is a really great example, hippie housewife, of how to really bring your workings together. So my shop is, what would you say this is? I think it's like 200, 300 square feet, not quite sure. But when it was open, it was just like energy, like spiraling in here. People would come in and like leave. If you're an empath and you're a seer and you're a medium or you're a healer, you all know that when people see me, all they want to do is vomit every single thing about themselves on me. And I get it. Because sometimes I do the same thing to my friends or my family. I totally get it. But energetically, for a sacred space, that can be really hard. So also considering who are you going to let in to see your things. We already talked earlier about, I don't show all my magical workings because I truly believe that even through Instagram, even through YouTube, you can alter the energy of my spell if I show it to you. Because everything is energy, people. So you have to remember that everything that we put on our altar, everything we put in our sacred space has a vibration. So if you do purchase something from Indigo, if you do purchase something from HomeSense, even if you purchase it from my shop, yeah, it's going to have my loving energy on it because I, do all the things. I chant over things. We charge things on every single one of the altar plates, every single one of the altars, every single one of my essential oil blends gets charged on this altar. So all of this magical working space goes into every single one of the products I use or I make. So, and that even goes for the crystals. When I'm picking crystals, I'm putting my energy and the workings energy into the Heisenberg principle. I don't know that one specific, but energy is in all things. So I'm assuming that's what that Heisenberg principle is. So when we receive things from places that are not, magically charged, you want to magically charge them yourself. So setting the intention, and once again, that can just be holding it close to your heart. You can whisper to it. You could put it outside in the rain to cleanse it. You could charge it or cleanse it with smoke. You can consecrate it with essential oils. Actually, when I sent the little altar plates home, everybody got a little bottle of my midsummer oil, so that when it dries out, because they do, it's wood. It's all of these are going to crack, just so you know. It's organic material and it's going to do what it needs to do. If your house is humid, these won't crack. But if your house isn't humid, these are going to crack, especially when it gets really dry in the winter. And to resolve that in some ways, we can anoint it and rub that oil in there with that intention. So I gave every single one of these altars and these altar plates. You don't get the full size, it's just a little bottle of it, but it comes with an anointing oil, so you can do that ritual yourself. And I do have the instructions with the altars. So if you are looking to create an altar and you want something to kind of like create the foundation, I think this one is still available, which is the rune for protection, which is super cool. And it's I did it like a kind of 3D. And then I think I have 2 snake ones left, but they're also available. So as you can see, all of these things are really important. What you select and what you put on your altar and in your sacred space are really important. You don't want to be putting elements in there that maybe have icky energy on it. You don't want to be putting elements in there that are maybe cheap and not natural elements, because I get excited when I go to the dollar store and go, ooh, they've got like a fragrance oil or whatever. And I will always buy it just to see. And then I always regret it. So I have a bunch of essential oils that I don't even allow in my, and I don't even think they're essential oils. I think they're fragrance oils. And knowing the difference between a fragrance oil and an essential oil is important, because fragrance oils are chemically based. Essential oils are pure essence of that plant. So there is a difference. There is a different vibration between those two things. And again, this doesn't have to be about money. Most of the things that are on my altar are found or gifted to me, or something that I've invested a little bit in. There is actually the only thing that is expensive on this altar is the Odin statue that I bought. And that was my Christmas gift to myself. It's hand carved. It's absolutely beautiful. I think it was like $150. But that was my gift to myself because I wanted a beautiful piece to represent Odin. I also have this altar behind it, was probably, I'm trying to think. That was from Ulrims and Oddities, who I absolutely adore. They're a Norse pagan creator in the States. They have incenses and, what else do they carry? Altar plates. They have boxes. They have all sorts of things. So if you're into Norse paganism, Ulrims and Oddities has some really amazing things. But really, when I'm looking at it, those are the only 2 things that I spent a decent amount of money on. This does not have to be expensive. So let's go. And sorry, Instagram, but you're not going to see the printable for this. I have created a printable because I love them and I think they're incredibly useful. And this will be in my community on Mighty Networks. You can go into my bio on Instagram and I will put the link to my community in the YouTube comments. So if you want a copy of this printable, you can go there. So we're just talking about what do you want to include in your altar or on your sacred space? Because sometimes it's a really good idea to plan these things, because we create new altars or we shift our altars for the season. Just you wait until it's ancestor season and it's Samhain and Emma is like super amped to talk to the ancestors. I'm going to switch over because right now I have an altar that's to all the creatures on this planet to help them get through the pandemic, because if you don't know, the pandemic has been great for human beings and it has been great for animals, But animals and humans have this amazing connection that can sometimes be quite tragic. So there are some colonies of animals that have become dependent on humans for feeding. So, like in India, all of those temples that people will go to, they feed rats, they feed monkeys, they feed all of these things. And when COVID happened, um, that disappeared for these animals. And if you don't know, I have always been an animal lover. It's kind of why I live where I live. I want to live at one with nature. I want to commune with the animals. So you've probably seen my stories about my 10 snakes that live outside my front door of the shop. But I created that altar just for that purpose. But at Samhain, it's going to change and it's going to become my ancestor altar. So you switch things up. So making plans for your sacred space and your altar can sometimes be good, because if you have a page like this and you're wanting to create something, you're thinking forward to Samhain or Halloween or whatever you want to call it, or you celebrate Day of the Dead, or you celebrate any ritual that you feel comfortable celebrating, because we all don't have to do it the same, ritual without rules. If you're thinking about that, you know, having a list of things that you want to collect to put on the altar. Like I have a bunch of coyote and deer skulls from our property, because we go out on the property every once in a while and we look for items that I could use. I have a little tiny mouse bone because I found an owl pellet. Amazing. So if you create a list and just mentally or on a piece of paper, it's really helpful to then be able to find these things over time, because it really is an accumulation. Like, you know, I'm out in the forest. This is like one of the most beautiful pine cones I have ever seen. It needed to be on my altar. So I still have no idea yet where this is going to go, but it goes, I have a table of things that I collect that aren't necessarily on my altar right now, but I know that I'll probably use in some magical workings. This is one of those items. What else do I have here that I have? Oh, okay. For me, handmade vessels is one of the things that I truly love. And I don't know if it's because I did do some pottery. I went to fine arts high school and we got to do everything. So this one is from Glastonbury. It's a sandstone. I absolutely love it. If you have like a sage wand, it sits perfectly. I used to sell these, but again, because of COVID and the extreme shipping costs that we're having right now, I haven't been able to bring these back in. But this is sandstone and they're handmade in Glastonbury. Love these, and I will get them back in eventually once COVID settles down. I stumbled across a pottery market a couple of weeks ago. You may have seen it in my stories. I fell in love with this bowl, and I think that is something that I want you guys to consider in all of this, is the energy of the objects that you put on your altar. Every single time I look at this, it just makes me happy. And I couldn't necessarily tell you why. I just love it. Like, I just think it just feels so earthy. It feels so natural. But I will use this bowl on my altar. I will put water in it if I need conversation to flow. You could put sand in the bottom and then use this as your fire safe vessel. Oh, it looks like a full moon. You're so right. Maybe that's why I love it. Isn't it so funny sometimes that we don't even see what other people see? I have, and at the same market, oh my God, I love these spoons. Oh my God. So I use this one to spoon in ritual, to spoon out my incense into my cauldron. So sorry, YouTube. These are my little spoons that I got. And, you know, it's even, I went around the market and I had conversations with all the makers. And if there was a maker that I had a conversation with that was rude, or like I could tell that they were totally stressed out, or I wouldn't buy from them, because I don't want that energy in my tools. And yes, I can clear it, but ultimately there is something about somebody that is happy-go-lucky, that has joy. Hey, Anne, thanks for joining. You know, all of these things are really important. I don't think people understand, you know, yes, you can go to the dollar store and buy all this stuff and put it on your altar, but do you think it's going to be as magical as the spoon that I got from the woman that talked to me about how cool is it that I'm going to use this for incense in ritual, and she loved what I was doing, and what is the difference going to be, right? It doesn't have to be expensive. This was $4. $4, people, and it's so magical. Or it can be free. So crystals, that is a good place to start, because I think most people getting into this practice start with something, a carnelian or a clear quartz. I have a lot of clear quartz. I have a lot of citrine, fluorite, any of these things. You put fluorite on your altar to create some clear thinking. I should probably put that in my pocket because, you know, I also do now. Yes, I understand cultural appropriation. I understand why we're not using certain tools, but I also believe that we shouldn't throw away things that we have purchased that we have an attachment to. I love this specific abalone shell. I got it years and years and years ago when I first opened the store. The colors in it are absolutely ridiculous. The size of it. So I don't actually use this in smoke clearing anymore like I used to, because to me that feels like a tradition that isn't my own. But I still love this. So instead of using it in the way that I was actually taught to use it by some indigenous elders, I use it on my altar to collect my stones, and it represents the element of water. So when we're doing all of these things, we have to consider, you know, is it in our tradition? And if you don't know your tradition, this is the one thing that kind of drives me a little bit crazy. And I did a talk probably 2 years ago about connecting with your ancestors. And people were like, I don't know anything about my ancestors. How am I going to find out about my ancestors? I'm like, you do the research. I will tell you, being a witch or working in the pagan realm or any of whatever you want to call it, it requires a lot of research. It truly does. You know, when you print off the ritual without rules, what do I include in my altar or sacred space, and you start to write things down, I want you to actually research some of the things that you're drawn to. So if you're drawn to having rose thorns on your altar because you think it's a cool thing, I want you to actually research why you would use roses on your altar. Don't just take my word for it. Don't just take anybody's word for anything, because it is your practice. It is your sacred space. So yes, take all of these suggestions that I am offering you, but ultimately it comes down to sitting with those tools, sitting in your sacred space and saying, does this make sense for me and my traditions and the energy of what I'm trying to do? So crystals, earthly elements, photos of loved ones. This is a big one for me. I use this quite a lot. So my son has been sick for a couple of days. COVID test done, not COVID, thank God. But he needs to get back to camp. So I put his picture on an altar with clear quartz around it to heal him. We can use our ancestors' energy. So you can put ancestors that have passed, people that are in your life now. So when my husband and I talked about this. I have one left in the shop. This is, I love Jessup's General Store. They are out in Alberta. So if the sizing isn't right on the one that I have left in the WOOshop, head on over to Jessup's General Store. I absolutely love this. She has a crop top hoodie in it too. So I got that too because I couldn't just leave it. So back to, you can put photos of your ancestors on your altar. You could actually have an altar or a sacred space just for ancestor veneration, where you feed them offerings every day and you speak to them every day. If you want to tap into mediumship or connecting to spirit, having a, where did that smoke come from? Did you just see that? Okay, I'm gonna have to go into the video and check that out. That was crazy. Okay, I saw that. I don't know if anybody else saw that. I just saw spirit. I was talking about ancestors and I'm like, where would that smoke come from? Because I have a candle back here, candle over here. Oh, you saw it? I love it when spirit shows up in my videos. So you can, yeah, because I was like, where is that smoke coming from? You can offer to your ancestors so they can give you their wisdom in return. I do that a lot around Samhain, around Halloween, because for me, that is the time to connect with your ancestors because the veil is so thin. So we can do ancestors, candles. Obviously, we love candles. And any kind of candle. This white candle that I use on my altar is actually, this is the only time that I will say yes, things from the dollar store are okay. I get these 5 packs of emergency candles and they're big and white and amazing. Oh, I saw it again. What is with you? We're like hanging out over here. Incense. I will tell you, and I think we spoke about this yesterday, that pure incense is the best incense. We have the Sea Witch Botanical. Yes, it is $1.20 something a stick. I get that that is more expensive than most incense, but it is the purest, most beautiful smelling incense that I have ever encountered. Also, the other place, and I will post some of these, I'll post about Jessup's General, O-Reams and Oddities, some of the other places that I have picked some of these items up so you can check them out. But this is O-Reams and Oddities incense. I may actually abandoned, I may have actually abandoned using Sea Witch Botanicals for their incense. And I'm going to try to get theirs in. We're just shifting a lot of the products in the shop right now. So incense, animals. Let me, so, I don't usually touch this altar, but I'm gonna, I'll do it just for you guys. This is my owl to represent Artemis for wisdom on my altar. This was hand carved in Morocco. So again, this has incredible significance to me. Raven's feather, also really significant to me. If you don't know, I have a giant raven on my arm. They are my connection to spirit. They are my connection to Odin, and they show up for me all the time. So having animals, what does that animal represent? Now, when we talk, and I don't use the term animal spirit because that is not of my tradition. We use animal totems in my tradition. So very similar to the same belief that they show up for you and you receive their medicine. Like I receive snakes medicine, I receive crow and raven medicine. I receive so much medicine from the animal world because I honor them on the daily. Yes, of course, you can have as many deities as you want on an altar. There are no rules to ritual. So if you are asking a patron or a god or a goddess to be your main patron, if you have decided that, hey, the only god for me is blah, 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 you may want to have an altar specifically to them. But I am very much a multi-deity worshiper, but that is my choice. So this is actually one of the other elements that I have on my altar that I did spend a little bit of money on. This is from a company in the States called Ceremonia. It's a Hecate's key. So if you don't know Hecate, she's the goddess of witches, Greek. I always get Greek and Roman messed up. So if I get that messed up, don't get mad at me. But she shows up for me when I don't even call on her. So I know, and it's interesting how she shows up. And I don't really talk about my relationship with Hecate a lot because that's one of those hidden things that I do. So I probably won't have conversations about that, but she is always ever present on my altar with her Hecate's key, wisdom. Keys are really important to me. So I always wear a key because I am also a sacred space. This is something that a lot of witches do not talk about, or a lot of practitioners do not talk about. Your body is your temple, people. This can be your sacred space. So think about how you're decorating your sacred space. I have a key to represent me. I am the key to my magic. I am the key to me being happy. I am the key to me being abundant. My choices, my decisions of what I put in my body, what I decorate my body with, is all me setting up a sacred space within my body. That is also something you really want to consider. So yes, multiple deities, totally cool. Again, I'm gulping. I think spirit's here. It's why we're seeing this up here. And sorry, YouTube, you're probably not going to see it because the video, it definitely showed up on Instagram. So I'll do a screen grab. So goddesses or goddess, or gods or goddesses. This is something we're going to talk about a lot on Friday. So I don't really want to go into like all the details of goddess worship because we're going to do that on Friday. But when we're talking about deities, and deities are, you can look at the whole pantheon of gods, right? Like all of the gods. There are Hindu gods, there are Celtic gods and goddesses, there are Norse gods and goddesses, there are indigenous gods and goddesses. There are so many deities to look at. It is my belief that if a deity reaches out to you, that is not cultural appropriation. So yes, do we want to honor them in the right way? Yes, please look at the correspondences. But don't ever rule out a deity because you don't think it's within your tradition. Because that is one thing that has kind of irked me about this whole cultural appropriation. And yes, do not do harm. If somebody says directly to you, or you know that this is a practice that is closed, or this is a practice that is not for everyone. But also when I say that, do your research, because, and I'm actually slightly fearful to bring up the Romany aspect of my practice, because the last time I talked about this, I got torn a new one by a whole bunch of Romany people that actually ended up not being Romany. And there's a big giant lawsuit going on about it. So just, I'm not involved in the lawsuit, but there's several other people involved in the lawsuit. So I'm not going to say anything. But, you know, for me, I'm Romany, Norse, Celtic. That is my background. It is, all of those things are a major part of my life. Romany for me is something that I have never had access to because in England, Romany are not treated well. So when you go to look for Romany information, it's either hidden from you, which it was in my family. We didn't even know. Like, it wasn't until like I really started digging into all of my ancestors and background and talking to cousins and talking to uncles and digging into our family tree did I find out any of this. Tarot is not a closed practice. I am just going to make that statement. I am not going to talk about why I believe it's not a closed practice because I've already done the video about that and stuff ensued. So I don't want to attract that. But be a researcher, and don't just go and look for the opinion that you want to hear. Talk to people that are saying, no, it's a closed practice. Talk to people that are saying it's an open practice. And then come to that conclusion for yourself. As long as you are not doing harm, As long as you are practicing for yourself and you're not out there going, hey, I'm going to teach you how to smudge, or hey, I will take money for, I'm going to teach you how to do this, 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 and this, and it's going to charge, or it's going to cost $250. It's not my tradition, but that's totally okay. That's also not cool. But finding deities in other traditions that are approaching you, like I took Kyle Gray's course 3 years in a row. Do you know why? Because Metronon and is it Gabriel? Metronon and Gabriel kept reaching out to me big time. And I know nothing about angels because I did not grow up in that tradition. I know nothing about Catholicism or, and angels aren't necessarily connected. And that's why I loved the way that Kyle taught it, because he's the same as me. This is energy. If they're showing up for you, there's a reason they're showing up for you. So I took the course. I still don't understand the connection. I would never say that I'm an angel card reader ever, because it's not, I just don't feel it. But I got the education because I wanted to learn more. I wanted to know what I was talking about. I wanted to know what the energy of angels were. But ultimately, I decided that that doesn't fit within my scope of my practice. So sometimes we grab onto things because we think maybe that's what we should do. And then ultimately, it's not something that ends up in your tool belts of things. So, gods and goddesses, be open to receiving whatever messages that the universe has to offer you, because there are so many deities, like millions probably. I think even more. I think there's a ton of deities we don't actually even know about. I'm constantly communicating with deities of the land, which I've never heard spoken about here in Canada. I know there are some indigenous traditions of the black snake and all. I understand all of those, but there is some energies here on my specific property that feel very deity based. And I just got a big shiver from my crown all the way down. So yes, that is correct. There are deities here on this property that have been worshipped in the past, but I don't have a name for them. Why would I turn that away? Why would I go, oh, sorry, deity, I don't know your name and I don't know your tradition and I don't know, but yeah, you're trying to communicate with me, but I'm going to ignore you. Ignoring deities, ignoring spirit, I will tell you, will lead to anxiety, overwhelm, and stress. It just does, because they will constantly knock on your shoulder. And we're going to talk about this on spirit the day we talk about spirit. And I've gone a really long time, but bear with me. We're almost done. I love all of these things, and I think we need to include all of them in our practice so it's uniquely ours. So I'm just going to turn off the ritual without rules piece there. So understanding that all of these things can be in your sacred space, and that you can make it as powerful as you want by being intentional about the items that you choose to put in your sacred space. Because your altar is your altar. It's nobody else's altar. Your sacred space is your sacred space, so it has to speak to you. That is what we're talking about. I do have altar kits because I love making them, and I think that there has to be somebody out there that really needed that altar that I made, because I channel while I'm creating all of my products, and I go, what do people need? And then I create. But, I don't know if you guys remember when Sephora came out with the witch kit, and it had sage and a couple of crystals and some. Do not buy these things. Don't buy things that are like created by corporations to make your witchcraft easy. That is not, if you try the easy route in witchcraft, it's not going to work. Like when I said, it's like, why isn't my love spell working? Because you bought a love kit off of Amazon and it had no magic in it. The tools had no magic in it. Your energy wasn't in it. Your love wasn't in it. The creator's love. Like, I think of all of these things that are out there. Last year, even Shoppers Drug Mart, which is a pharmacy here in Canada, they had spell candles in their Halloween section. That's great because I think it's awesome that companies are realizing that there's so many of us out there. I do love that aspect, but they're profiting off of things that they're not interested in. That's the piece that bothers me. That's the piece that always how can you create magical tools when there's no magic in them? All of these things that I have collected over the years. This is my, if you don't know, Glastonbury tour. This is another sandstone item that I got when I was in Glastonbury to represent, because I will tell you, I portal to Glastonbury a lot. Like a lot. When I'm in meditation, when I'm doing my magical workings, this is where my heart always goes. So a lot of my tools come from there. And that's how you create a sacred space. That's how you create magic, is it's layer upon layer upon layer upon layer of magical tools that can cost you nothing or cost you a little bit. But it's the intention and the energy that you put into these tools. It's carrying a table since you were 16. It's being gifted a magical tool like a wand from your brother when you're 16. It is all of these things that amplify our magic. It's not about the latest crystal. It's not about the latest tarot deck. Did you even notice that I didn't really mention oracle or tarot decks or any of the typical tools that you see being sold? All of this stuff is created from the earth. All of this stuff is created in the idea of creating magic. Those tools are going to be the most magical tools you have ever had in your presence. It's not the next book. It's not the next deck. It's not it's the things that you collect on your journey. My eyes are always open for these magical tools. Actually, Candace, she's in our community, the WooMate community that you can join through the link in my bio and below in the video below. A Ouija, I don't mind Ouija boards. It's totally up to you. I wouldn't put a Ouija board on an altar because an altar is a portal. So essentially what I'm saying is, if you put your Ouija board on your altar, that is an open portal, unless you decide to close it off after every single session. You have to be very clear when you're working with Ouija boards or any tools that are about divination. But I will actually bring a Ouija board onto the divination tools day. So we'll talk more about that. But yes, all of these things, and let me just see if there's any questions. Spiritual. Oh, so Romani, I have a question on YouTube. Somebody asked what Romani is. So travelers, the term that has been used for centuries but is a slur is gypsy. Romani tradition comes from originally Hindu tradition. So Romani traveled centuries and centuries and centuries ago, all the way across from India to Eastern Europe? And then my ancestors ended up in England. In England, we're called the Roma or Romancel. In Italy, I think it's Romani. So there is a lot about that tradition I do not speak about because it is a very closed practice. And I only know, okay, let's do this. I know this much about Roma. So I don't feel like I am an elder in any way, shape, or form to be speaking about that. I'm only just learning about it myself, but it's something I want to learn more about. And that is truly what witchcraft is about, is educating yourself. educating yourself about all of these things and then bringing them together to create your own kind of magic. Nobody else's magic is as powerful as your own magic. So start collecting your tools. Start looking for natural elements. Start looking at what you want to represent on your altar. If you want that printable, I will put a link in my bio. Well, the link in my bio on Instagram already goes to my community, and I will put it below on YouTube so you can join the community to get the printables. It's in the course section on our community on Mighty Networks. It's free. Like there's no charge for you to get in there, but that's where I'm storing all my content, because I will also tell you, you have to consider your online world as another sacred space. And what I was noticing was Facebook was becoming a dumpster fire. And I didn't want to host my community on there anymore. And to me, the energy is so important. And if you have followed me for a while, you will notice that I'm not on Facebook as much as I used to be. I don't even really post a lot of personal stuff on Facebook anymore, because it is such an open-minded and great community. I love our community, but you have to remember that that community is a sacred space. So when I felt like I could no longer hold a sacred space on Facebook, we were having people come into the community that were being really raw. They were being really rude. And I have rules. 2 strikes and you are out. So if you are inappropriate, if you are bullying, if you are, causing harm in any way, shape, or form, you get 1 warning. Second time, you are out. I have no tolerance. That is one of the ways that I hold space for people. And I truly found like that was becoming impossible on Facebook. So for me, I decided to create my sacred community space on a network that is wholly my own, which is called the Mighty Network. The Mighty Network is a big platform, but when you come onto our community on Mighty Network, you will only see my content. There is no advertising. It is managed by me and it is paid for by me. So there is no advertising. There is no boost posting stuff. It's all mine. I'm hosting all my courses there. I'm hosting all my content there, and I'm hosting all my communities there. The community is absolutely beautiful. We have a library, we have a leaky cauldron for like just social community and not about witchy. So you can talk about anything you want to talk about in there. I'm a huge fan about talking about sex and relationships. So we haven't gone there in the community yet, but I'm so excited to, because all of that stuff is so juicy. I truly believe that a sacred space is one of the most important things that we can create for ourselves and for our community. So that is why I chose to create it on the Mighty Network, because to me, it feels much safer than all the other platforms. Like I said, I've been attacked on Instagram, I've been attacked on Facebook, and I am fine. I can hold my ground. I can have that conversation. I can do those things. But I know there are people that aren't capable of doing that. And I want to hold space for that community. I want to hold space for people that don't necessarily understand the traditions yet, that don't necessarily understand all of the workings of it, and create a space where they can learn those things safely and ethically and in a way that acknowledges our ancestors, acknowledges our teachers. Because one of the other things that I have really noticed about this community that has gone downhill in the last little while is acknowledging our teachers. I acknowledge every single teacher I have worked with. Kyle Gray was one of the first teachers that I kind of like truly connected with, because we teach the same way. We're very grounded and honest and open and truthful. And it's not about being a guru. It's about being an equal. When I'm sitting here speaking to you on YouTube or Instagram, I don't believe I know it all. I don't believe I have all the answers. I'm just sharing the wisdom that spirit and the energy gives me every single day. And if it strikes a chord with you guys, that is amazing. And if I can help propel you on your journey of spirituality, that is amazing. That is what I'm here for. I'm a manifester. I'm here to inform, give information, and sit back and watch you all thrive. And one of the ways to do that is acknowledge our teachers. Chris Ann has taught me a lot. Vanessa Sage has taught me a lot. Vix Maxwell, the new age hipster, she was one of the YouTube creators that I very first found when I stepped back into this 2012, 2009, maybe, like in that phase. That's when I found Vix. And since then, we've become really good friends. And I have grown that community, and I always acknowledge my teachers. I'm actually sitting in the sacred course right now with Asha Frost, who is an Indigenous medicine woman here in Canada. I pay my teachers. I want to encourage everybody out there that if there's somebody that you want to learn from, pay them. Yes, I'm doing this for free, but if you have sat on my channel for the last 5-6 years of whatever it is I'm doing, go buy a candle in my shop to show your appreciation. Go buy, a session. Support your teachers, because we're seeing this right now. Nobody is supporting their teachers. Nobody is sharing who they learned from. Nobody is saying, hey, this is a really big, amazing community. Here's all the people. And if you've ever taken a course with me, I always do interviews with all of these people. You will always see them in my courses because I love them so much and I want to share them with the world. And that is about creating a sacred space of respect and understanding. So understand. Oh, you bought the oak tree. I love it. See, Michelle, I love Michelle. You've been to the shop quite a few times. And I appreciate that. I have so much gratitude for people that show up and support me doing these free things, but also doing the work that I was born to do. Because if you haven't noticed, this comes incredibly natural. This is what I was born to do. I had a waffle at halfway through what we've been through in the pandemic right now, where I'm like, is this really what I'm supposed to be doing? And then I was like, of course I am. This is the easiest thing that I do. So why would I not share this with the world? Thank you for your support. Thank you for showing up to learn about Sacred Space. I know I went on for a really long time today. What am I at? Almost an hour and a half. But this is the foundation of your practice, is your sacred space, right? Yesterday, we looked at where you can create ritual in your everyday. And now you're going to go and create your sacred space. You're going to have a space that you can pour that magic into, that you can pour that love into, that you can make offerings to your gods or goddesses, that you can make offerings to your totem animals. This is the foundation. This is where it starts. Your natural elements that are on your altar that convey to the universe what it is that you're looking to do. So go create a sacred space for yourself. Bye for now, Woo Mates. See you tomorrow.